Good morning. I'm just seeing who we're missing. Okay. Well, we're going to begin. First of all, are there any public speakers?
There is one, Mr. Catalanato from Central Station Groceries. If you'd approach the podium, please.
What's a real estate agent?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alfred Catalanato, President of Central Stations Grocery Corp., which I refer to as CSG. I'm here today because I am in need of your assistance. In front of you have a memo that was distributed to your panel before the meeting started. Last month, I watched via internet this board congratulate the Director of Real Estate for Grand Central on the outstanding financial report. I, in turn, take that as a compliment, as CSG ranks the highest in sales per foot in Grand Central Terminal amongst its neighbors. On page 2 and 3 of my memo, you'll see the ranking from Jones Lang LaSalle. Central Station Grocery is operated successfully in Grand Central for 32 years. Yes, I started here in 1977. CSG's track record is exemplary. In January of 2009, the RFP was issued for MC15 Central Market Chill, a store we currently occupied. We were not awarded this space as we were not the highest responsible bidder. Subsequently, with a meeting with the Director of Real Estate for the MTA, it was explained to me that the highest responsible bidder would be awarded the space, and there was no option for the MTA, as per an executive order signed by Governor Pataki. In April of 2009, CSG answered the RFPs for MKT 15 on the agenda today and MC 17, which is not on the agenda today. To my delight, CSG is the highest responsible bidder for MK 15. However, the staff summary recommendation to this board is to go with a lower bidder, with no track record in Grand Central Terminal. CSG and its affiliates have operated various locations that have produced many fresh baked goods. Currently, CSG employs a certified master baker on its executive staff for 14 years. I have also attached a letter to the memo from Local 102 of the Bakers Union in support of CSG. We are food service experts in the commuter service transportation environment. It's clear that CSG's base bid is $122,771 more than the recommended bidder. CSG expects the sales to far exceed those projected of the lower bidder, thus producing more revenue for the MTA with the percentage rent. There seems to be a double standard. When CSG was not the highest bidder, it was explained to me that there was no option for the MTA. Now CSG is the highest bidder, and the MTA Real Estate Department has produced an option not to take the highest bidder. My request today is simply to ask this board to postpone the award of this space until further review of the facts. I am more than confident that awarding MKT 15 and MC 17 to CSG is in the best financial interest of the MTA. I will be happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I would like to pull this, and Nancy, could you give us, unless you can explain to us right now or refute what this gentleman is saying.
When we review the RFPs, there are a multiple of selection criteria that go into the selection. Financial offer is one of the elements of the selection criteria. Sometimes it is true. Our history has been, throughout the public process over the last 2 years, we do not always take the highest bidder when we review and apply all the elements of the selection. That is why, in this instance, we came away with the selection we're going with.
I totally respect your decision, but 1977, that's the year I graduated high school. I mean, this gentleman, that was forever ago, has been in Grand Central Terminal for over 30 years. So for the moment, unless it's going to cause a crisis at Grand Central Terminal, I'd like to pull this and have you re-look at it. That's all I'm asking. Is this going to cause any kind of...
No crisis.
No crisis, no hardships? Okay. We have enough crisis to deal with. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enough crisis at this point.
Okay,
Right?
I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting in a second. Second, okay, so moved. There are no changes to the work plan. The status reports. First, we're going to have a summary of the work on the 7 West project. That's what we're going to do first, isn't that what you said, Ronnie? Or can we go
No,
in our
we-
typical order? I'd rather go in the book order.
The issue is that Michael has a presentation.
Right,
I can.
but
I
think,
can actually briefly go over some of the things on the other projects,
I think
but
we
then
should
I
go
would
over
like
the
to.
projects and then the presentation.
I would like to focus the presentation today on East Side Access
Right.
and Second Avenue
So
Subway.
we're going to do a brief, very brief update on the other
absolutely.
projects, and then we're going to save the two to the end.
That's just that South Ferry. Nothing changed from last month. The only thing that is happening is that the work on the Peter Minuit Plaza is moving forward, and there will be. The Battery Park Conservancy is planning for an event on September 9th. They call it 090909. That is sponsored by the Dutch government, and which the Crown Prince will be there, and it's a big event, and we are accommodating them for that. So that's as much as I can tell you about that.
I just want to say.
Okay. At the Fulton Street Transit Center, we have received a bid, a successful bid for the AC mezzanine at $120 million. That was below the engineer's estimate, and it was accepted. And today we expect to get 2 more bids for the 4, 5, and Day Street concourse. So so the Fulton Transit is moving ahead swiftly, and we expect to stay on budget and within schedule that has been described to you in the past. So we have nothing really to report on that more than what I just said. As far as the number 7 line west extension, again, the project is moving well. We already went through that is kind of a milestone for us to the ground freeze area, so we penetrated with a TBM. It worked well. Things are in place, and things are moving, and we are actually, again, we've not lost the time, and we are still ahead of schedule on that. That's about as much for number 7. I would like now to move to presentation on.
Before
Yes,
you do
I'm
that,
sorry.
did we just go over South Ferry? I got a question on the South Ferry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's an increase in the budget this month of $7.5 million for construction management.
The South Ferry, my recollection is that we have reported last time that we expect an increase in budget around $12 million.
And the
And that,
explanation.
excuse me?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And that included the various things that we expected to occur. That included the whatever costs that we're talking about.
Can someone elaborate on because you give an explanation in the book saying that the extended duration of the project and extensive resources deployed to commission the new station led to an increase in construction management costs.
The construction management was primarily force account dollars. We managed it in-house. So the force account has gone up significantly.
But Mike, I would appreciate in the future, when you are giving these brief overviews, I mean, to mention that insignificant item you mentioned regarding South Ferry, and then not to mention this increase. That's all.
I mentioned the increase last time, and
I know, but it didn't hit till this time.
Okay.
That's all. To have a $7 million increase.
When you say it didn't hit this time, I'm not sure.
Because the book
The book didn't show it.
Oh, it
last
didn't show
time.
it last
You
time
said
around.
it was
Okay,
creeping
I'm
and
sorry.
it was going to happen, but now it happened.
Okay.
So instead of mentioning about, I don't know what, the Crown Prince or something, I think this would have been. That's all. I'm not here to.
Okay.
It's.
I can give you a more detail on that.
Last month you prepared us for it.
Yeah.
You
I
did. I'm
Okay.
not denying that. But now it hit this month. It's
Okay.
like, yeah, we did have a late discussion, but it did hit this month, and I think it should have been noted. I mean, it's here in print, but it gives a little more credibility when you mention it. Okay. Now we're,
Then we go back to Second Avenue and East Side Access. The today presentation is actually the culmination of efforts on coming back to you and giving you my assessment and our collective assessment of the cost and schedule to complete both Second Avenue as well as the East Side Access. I'll present, obviously, the schedule and update for both, and also give you indications as to our project management plan going forward. Due to time limitations, I'm not prepared today to give you details on the project management plan, although I expect to come back in September and give you that. In order to understand it, I would like to go back to give you a brief history of and recap some of the events. In March 2008, there was a 30-day review and that short time frame was there to meet some legislative requirements for submitting, in fact, a plan in anticipation of the congestion pricing, and that was kind of an off-year plan, 2008-2013. That plan came up with a revised budget and schedule and established a budget of $4.347 billion for the Second Avenue with completion in June 2015, and an East Side Access of 7.244, again with a completion in February 2015. Due to the fact that this was an accelerated review and there are a lot of uncertainties, there was a risk reserve put aside of $747 million to address projects and market uncertainties. It was not clear at the time how things would happen, so they put $747 million in reserve, with the idea of allocating these funds to projects pending other reviews and as things would develop. At that time, the planning efforts included there were all kinds of assumptions that clearly the project was extended into the next and possibly the following capital plan. That were issues related to funding. And past that, sometimes in May of 2008, there was a blue ribbon panel, and the existence of blue ribbon panel was known at the time, and we needed to. There are other continuing pressures on cost and schedules, and also the blue ribbon panel eventually came up with recommendations and to what to do on the projects and how to proceed. So all of these factors that were known that will come up created the need to establish a reserve. Now, when I came in later on at the end of July last year, part of my duty was the due diligence to look and understand each and every project in terms of schedule, intricacies, complexities, so I can determine, in effect, that the quick review on 2008 March is appropriate, and I've done for every project my due diligence, and these are the last two that we are addressing. And what is important to understand that the current review, or all of these reviews, not only were done by my staff and the project staff, but it was done together in consultation with the Office of Construction Oversight, as well as your independent engineering consultant. So whatever I present today is really a compilation of the wisdom of these three bodies that debated, looked, and came up with what you're going to see today. What we have done in the process also is to start reallocating to individual projects some of the money that has been set aside out of the 747 to then now be more precise because we start having more and more knowledge about the project, so we have done that. One of the important things to remember here is the complexity and uniqueness of these two specific projects that are extremely large and carry large risks. They carry geotechnical risks. You dig tunnels, you not always know what you're going to find. There are risks, utility risks, that you're going underground and you don't really find what's there exactly. There are issues in design. There are issues dealing with stakeholders, be that are internal or external. And all of these complexities add layers of risks to the delivery of the project. So in terms of the guiding principles that were established for this process was to look at what I refer to as the worst and best scenario, or the best and worst scenario. That means we started to look at risks, and on one side we said, here is the good thing. The moon, the sun, and the earth lined up. Everything is fine. All of the risks go away, and then we have one schedule and one price. You look at the other side, and now you start looking, and we looked at it with a 90% of certainty of certain risks occurring, and then compiling all of these risks, and then we came with a high end. That means this is what would happen if you... And now that we had the two parameters, we started to look at ways to mitigate risk, and we took an approach, okay, that is proactive in this case, in which we will not react to risks, but we will forecast risk and address mitigating measures as these things come up. So in effect, we will be able to manage risk instead of reacting to risk. For that, we are putting in place a lot of systems, and I've talked about it last time around, and as to how we govern ourselves, and at the project level and at the MTACC level, because we want that to be across the board, not each and every one of them having a separate thing. So, and then from that, we decided to manage projects at the targeted budget and schedule. And we've done that knowing what the risks are and how we can manage those risks. I would like to bring you now to some numbers, and there is a, and I'm not sure you can see it from there, but this is what we had in 2008 was $4.347 billion. And then we have our low and high, 4.3 and 4.775. And at the same time, what we have done, because this is one part of the puzzle that we yet to solve, that this is we are now working with FTA and their estimates.
Now, explain to me what the disparity is between your estimates and the FTA estimates, so we don't have any more surprises.
Okay. At this point, the FTA estimates are independently established by FTA, and they are based not only on what happens here, but they have looked throughout the country at a number of their projects, and they've come up with a low and a high that is obviously higher than ours. Nevertheless, we have had discussion with FTA, and at this point, there is an expectation on the part of FTA, as indicated to us, that they believe that we can achieve our budget, okay, with the implementation of the new integrated decision-making processes that we're going to put in place. And at this point, we're in negotiations with FTA in order to achieve that. So, yes, their numbers are different than ours. They're based on different assumptions, and our staffs are working together now to actually be able to reconcile that and come back with an answer that, with a number that how we will manage to deliver that with the budget.
So you're not going, your staff isn't meeting to decide whether or not the FTA numbers are realistic and your numbers are not realistic?
No, we are in discussion with them at the staff level to understand how they came up with their numbers. They understand how we came up with our numbers, and they're working to reconcile that. And again, the process and management processes that need to be put in place are key to that happening.
Absolutely. Mike, yeah, pardon me. Jeff?
Sorry, Michael, one of the
Yes.
things that this committee and the chair have consistently asked over the last couple of months is for updates to this. And, you know, it's taken a year for whatever particular reason, but one of the main, I think, answers you've had said is why it's taking so long, even though we've asked what, in fact, the MTA's estimates are, is that you've been under discussions with the FTA. And we've waited all this time because you wanted to get on the same page with the FTA. What you're telling us now is the FTA is still not on the same page as us.
That's correct.
And then, in fact, their estimate is almost over $1 billion higher than we think, and almost 2 years, well, I guess a year on both ends of it. So it's an additional year. So I guess there's a bit of frustration on our part, because at least part of what I guess I could live with of why we waited a whole year was you wanted to make sure we're on the same page with the FTA. At some point, I guess you decided we're not, and you decided you should let us know what you think, right? I mean, you did it now. Sooner probably would have been better because we would have been in the same place, it sounds like. So how, I guess I'm just venting a little bit of frustration right now, is that we've waited so long to make sure you're on the same page with the FTA, and you're not, and everything we've been told up until this point. In fact, up until now, for the first time I think anyone's seeing this chart, including an FTA estimate, that we didn't know about until you just turned the chart on right now, as far as I'm aware of.
Okay.
Just for the timing issue, just to help inform that a little bit. As you know, we're in the midst of preparing the 10 to 14 proposed capital program, and you may remember the 30-day review was done in advance of the proposed 8 to 13 because you're going to carry numbers in the program. And so what generated the need to, sort of put this out while the FTA review is still ongoing. We've been working with them. They're not finished with their review. They're furthest along with the Second Avenue subway review. They're not finished. They did it independently and using, as Michael said, their own methodological framework, and so that dialogue is still ongoing. However, numbers need to inform the capital program. We're in the situation we were in back when, and so the independent engineer, the Office of Construction Oversight, both of whom aren't part of CCC, worked with CCC and finished that review, and those inform those numbers. The FTA numbers are still a work in progress.
And how long ago did we refine our MTA numbers? Just in the last 30 days?
I would say in the last 30 days or about.
The last meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, we worked on that. But let me just actually make one comment. I am confident, and as I said last time around, you can hold me accountable that we will deliver on the numbers that we have there. We have done an exhaustive review of that. We are aware of the risks, and in fact, even at this point, FTA has given us indication that they will agree to our number, given that they will see the decision-making processes that we are putting in place, that they are responsive to their needs.
Okay. I have one technical question, and you talked about the $747 million risk reserve before. So is it fair to say that this is in addition to the 747, that in fact you've now allocated the 747 within the budget?
We have done certain allocations, and we do carry also reserves in addition to that we have had. But we have allocated to projects, and we carry within the projects also contingency and so forth. Within these numbers, we carry that.
Can Tony specifically answer that question to Joe?
Yeah, I mean, originally there was 920 in the budget, of which 747 was allocated to MTACC projects. Now with the new reserves, it'll be about 697. on top of that. So some of those reserves did go.
But not much.
Well, it's going to be 697.
And it was
So it was 902.
So
920, I'm sorry, 920.
So you've allocated about $300 million worth
Right.
of reserves to also new
Cover things, right,
new
right.
costs. So the net increase is actually $300 million higher than what we originally
Right, yeah,
thought,
that's
although
right.
we had smartly set aside the reserve.
Right. Because you knew some of these things were going to happen from market conditions.
I've now cut you off in the middle of your presentation and sort of,
Yeah.
I was sort of hoping that also through this, we would explain why, in fact, there's the delay, and besides the fact
I
that
can
you
actually
manage the
just
process.
briefly tell you that the delays have been for a couple of reasons that the delay occurred. One is the fact that we have learned from the lesson of the Fulton Transit Center that we are breaking up the project into smaller components. We get better bids, more bidders, and we are able to progress the work without looking at a constant increase in cost. The other part is the fact that these projects being so complex, one of the things that have not been properly looked at was at the end of the project, the commissioning part, and that is critical. We may, and I have not given you, but I can give you, the hard construction may end, but on some of these projects, we may have up to a year and a half of commissioning, because you have to train the operators. East Side Access, as you'll see, is a good example. The line is a new line. You now you have work rules. Not everyone, it's just not that as simple that you open the train and you're letting the trains to go through. So it's a very complex process that was not properly accounted for.
Michael, could I ask, just along with that, was there a delay in getting the TBMs, or has geological conditions changed as you?
By the way, on the 2nd Avenue, the TBM right now is sitting in a yard in Jersey. We have, and we will bring it in as soon as the pit is ready. We had delays, as you could. I mentioned it to you when I made presentation on 2nd Avenue that it took twice as long to put the slurry walls in. And that was, we worked off the contractor's schedule, and that was not necessarily an anticipated thing, not even on the part of the contractor. We had delays with DEP. So there are delays and these are risks, by the way, that in effect we could have anticipated that as we're going along as to what the risks are.
That's part of, I think, what some of my fellow board members' frustration is. Those risks have been present all along, and so we're wondering how the original and then the revised completion dates, and then you're 2 years later than that even. That's just a little disheartening, obviously.
I'm going to say one thing. I believe that the original schedules were extremely optimistic. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, if there was one word to describe Mysore, he was optimistic. Exceedingly so.
Michael, could we get a sense of the principal differences between the FTA estimates and ours? If there are things like escalators and contingencies, that's one thing, but if there are different areas where the estimates, where their assumptions markedly differ from ours, I'd be interested in hearing that.
So when do you want to give, you said you have to
I would reserve.
give us a firm meeting that you'll be able to give us a firm, I don't know if I want it all. When? And a firm one.
I mean, for FTA?
To analyze the difference between the FDA's bid and yours.
I would
estimates
be.
and
Let me put it
Ronnie, I
this
want
way.
you to write this down.
I am not able to tell you what FTA will or will not do, and I'll be, as blunt as I can. I can tell you what we can do and what I can achieve with our own internal people. I cannot speak for FTA
But
in this
didn't you
case.
say that you were going to?
We're
be
working with
evaluating?
them. We're working with them. We're going through the numbers. This is, Their numbers are coming from all kind of reports. In some instances, they're saying they are not for distribution, and they have their internal things.
Why don't we just take back this request, talk to FTA, and figure out how to come back to the board
Thank
with an
you, Ronnie.
explanation of the differences?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. One other very quick question. Could you give me a sense of what, in the original budget, what sort of escalators and contingencies we had built in addition to that 747? Do you remember what those are?
Don't remember it by heart.
Oh, you could
I
get back
will
to me.
get
Thank
back
you.
to you, but I don't remember by heart. No.
I think everybody has to remember that when these big projects begin to percolate in somebody's mind, and people want to have estimates and time frames when these big projects get done, the people who do that don't necessarily take into consideration all the difficulties. And if they were, they might scare these projects away. So the tendency always is to be optimistic, as Mysore has and was. And I think anybody who's built a house or renovated an apartment or done something has seen that. If people told you what the worst case would be, you wouldn't do it. You engineers, architects, people who want to get projects like Second Avenue Subway on the books and get them done tend to be optimistic. And if they weren't optimistic, people wouldn't probably do it. It's just a human tendency. And I think what happens when you get into it and you're roughly halfway through it, the realities of the project become clear and they get to be exposed. And they aren't necessarily as optimistic as human beings would like them to be when you have to get down in a tunnel and you have to do all the things that you have to do that are very complicated, involve many contracts, and reality changes what happens. And this is just normal things that happen in big construction projects. And anybody who's been through it, what you're seeing now is part of a normal process. These are very complicated, very difficult things to do. They're much more difficult than building a home. And once you go underground and you listen to the problems about the utilities, the conditions of the soil, what the market conditions are at a time usually 5 to 10 years from when you first start planning the project, this is just really normal noise. Nobody has done anything wrong here. Reality has caught up with the dream, that's all. And everybody ought to keep that in mind. You got a lot of people working very, very hard on staff to make sure that this time it's right. Because this time we're halfway through it and we ought to know what's right. Okay? Just keep that in mind. These guys are working very, very hard to make sure that this time there's no, illusion or no too optimistic thinking. And that's why those budgets are there. And hopefully by the time we get finished with the FDA, they'll be all on the same page. And that will happen as long as Ronnie says, as it takes. And these people will come back until it gets done and tell you what the processes are each month if it's not done.
Thanks,
Okay?
Dale. Susan?
We all agree with you, and we've seen this many times. The reason we implemented the risk assessment process is to try to get our hands around it so that we could at least bracket some of that unknown. And I'm still trying to get my hands around a little bit about the FTA's estimate versus our estimate. Does that footnote at the bottom mean that the actual estimate for the FTA was $222 million higher than what we're seeing in the green bars?
Yes.
Is it typical for FTA estimates to be higher than the transit properties estimates? Is that a usual
Yes.
thing? It is.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So we have full funding grant agreements for both.
Excuse
We have
me?
full funding grant
Yes,
agreements.
we do.
And that's the FTA's involvement. Given the size of these, typically it's not full funding, right? Is it capped, or are they splitting 50-50 all the estimates? It's capped, right?
It's a cap. Anything that goes beyond a certain number is our dime.
And that's
And I believe that the last full funding agreement for what was that, for Second Avenue? Yeah, 1.3.
oh, so they only give 1.3
1.3
of
billion,
of the 5 or whatever. Okay.
It's not also a percentage?
No, it's not a floating percentage, no.
And that's just
It's an
because
absolute number.
They're such big projects, right? Typically throughout the country, they actually they do 50-50 or 100%.
Big ones are a third.
Big ones are a third.
Yeah, they're really big ones.
Yeah, no, I expect it.
I mean, the highway are very. Oh, I'm sorry. The highway projects, on the other hand, are much more generous.
Yeah.
Are they? Yeah.
Much more generous, yeah.
They used to be up to 90% on
But
the
they're usually in
interstate.
the third to-
They're now at actually 50%
So,
on highway.
not for nothing, but we could take it. If the FTA is just giving us a capped dollar amount at this point, what do they care?
It's still a big part of their money that we're just spending, so they have a say as
they
to what
do-
goes on. You basically made a contract with them, and now you're in violation of that contract, so you have to go back and do mitigation to try to bring that in, find some way of bringing that in.
Well, plus, if our costs go too high and we can't finish the project, their money
Just
will
their
have been
money.
for naught.
Exactly. That's exactly what it
That's
is.
the,
Okay, let's continue.
anyway,
May-
just
may
remember
I-
I gave you a book
Oh, wait,
about
Mark LeBeau?
projects. Look at it.
Like Dale, I have worked on projects that are construction projects that are in the billions of dollars, and I don't think I have ever seen anything that's halfway through. This thing started in 2001, before most of us who are here today even got on this board, and I guess we're halfway through. And I have never seen anything that has 5 different scenarios halfway through, which differ between 2 years, as much as 2 years, and $1.5 billion. I mean, I'm not as fond as you are as engineers, as you know, because I'm more fonder of the contractors. But if engineers are good for anything, at this point, they should tell us what they think is going to happen and not 5 different scenarios. And I think that we're all uncomfortable with 5 different scenarios because we have businesses along this route that are inconvenienced. We have customers who want to know when the trains are going to be there so that the Lexus isn't crowded. They want to. We have to keep up our confidence with the public, and if we say there's 5 different scenarios and 5 different costs that vary so differently, they aren't going to be very happy with us. So I encourage you to do your job like you usually do it and come up with one chart which combines the best that you can possibly come up with. And if that's it, then say it.
We're managing to the budget that we're showing. In this particular case, is 4451, with an ending date of 12/16. I guess, yeah, 12/16. That's what we are managing for, and that we are confident that we can deliver it on that. But it would have been remiss for us not to present to you the range that we looked at, as well as the fact that FTA, that is our funding partner, at this point, has different ranges. And the fact that it is different, it is different. I can't help but presenting what I found.
I just want to, I know, like, I appreciate that. Like, that's what we had asked for, right? And so I get that. I'd be more upset if you didn't tell us the FTA numbers or not. So I don't think any of this is a knock on any of the work that you guys have done or seen it. I think it's just frustration on our part that we've been waiting so long to see it. And one of the reasons we were waiting to see it was to get on the same page with the FTA. And at the end of the day, it just became too late, and you've had to finally tell us. And, you know, we hear it, it's going to be 2 years and 1 year. And, you know, I hope that we're right. I hope that you can convince the FTA that, in fact, your budget's correct and get there.
We believe that
for me, it's frustration.
Well, we share your frustration, quite frankly, because we were hoping to be able to present to you, something that FTA has already been blessed, but we are not there, and we are very confident that what we put up as a budget and schedule is a deliverable budget and schedule. We have very strict decision-making processes. We're now looking at projects on a weekly basis. I'll come back because I expect to give you reports in a graphical form so you will see exactly where we are on every project. So that's something that I couldn't present today. It would have taken too long. So that's why I elected to do it separately.
Well, let me go back and make it clearer again. The things that we're doing now, like risk assessment, were never done before. It's all new, and that's part of why I think the FDA is in a different place than we are, is that we didn't have these things in place when we did the last estimates. And so the FDA wants to make sure that we're right, so they're covering themselves until they're sure that all the new processes and systems that we've put in within the last year, since Michael got here, are actually in and functioning. And my guess is by the time it's over, it'll be much closer. If not, they'll agree with us. But, only time will tell that we really are doing things very differently now than we did 2 years ago. And if anybody wants to come and spend the time on the CAP construction meetings that I run and listen to the risk analysis that Linda and her people give us, you'll see there's a very different system in effect than we had a year ago. We have made progress, but progress has its problems. You know, nothing is perfect. And so I understand everybody's frustration. When I came here, I was frustrated too, but one of the things I do have is experience in construction and all these things with the staff trying to get a hold of these big projects so that in the future these things wouldn't happen again. So please be patient. They've worked very hard, and this should make the result much better over time in the future. Don't go back, go forward. What doesn't do any good to blame people who aren't here or aren't around. We have to make the best of what we see when we see it, and we're doing it much, much better. And we will stub our toe. These projects are still very complicated and things can go wrong, but we've got much better systems and control than we did a year ago.
I think another area of concern that I have, Michael, is the perpetuation of this disconnect between the completion of 2nd Avenue Subway and the completion of East Side Access, and the implications for the 4, 5, and 6 riders, dire now and absolutely horrific when you start bringing more people.
Actually, I'm prepared to show you the East Side Access if you would
yeah.
allow me to. So next, Bogdan.
Perfect segue.
The numbers here are
Thanks, Dale.
the expectation of completion, okay, for the East Side Access is 9/16. So this is September of 2016. That is about the same time with the, it's 12/16 the prior one, 9/16 this one.
If that's the way it is, that's fine.
Okay? Again, we have done the analysis here on looking at a high risk, low risk, and then we have established a budget, time and dollars that we believe we can manage to and deliver the project within that. Yes.
I'm sorry. This is what Doreen was referring to. If you take the last chart's 2nd Avenue completion date under the chart budget, which was 12/16, and this is 9/16, this has the possibility of pouring large amounts of additional riders on the Lex before the 2nd Avenue line is open. That's what she and I, and I'm sure lots of other folks, would like to avoid.
And the high scenario for both is even worse.
Yeah.
Maybe I could address this, because I think I've spoken to this a couple times before. One of the interesting things about the demand for East Side Access is understanding the sensitivity between a trip to Grand Central and a trip to Penn Station. There are going to be lots of transitions up and down and choices made by Long Island customers as to which station they're going to choose, now having a choice. They could come in at one station and leave at another, or vice versa, just because of the way the trip making is done. So from a planning point of view, I don't expect to see the ridership on 2nd Avenue settle down for many, many months while customers decide what's the best way to get in and out of the city depending on the time of day. So I think that, while I understand the philosophy and the concern, and Andrew's talked about it many times before, the actual way that people make travel choices is not as black and white as we talk about it. It's not that you turn the switch on and automatically there's a funnel that goes that way. There's a lot of balancing and rebalancing over a period of time with the ridership. So I think that given that, you're going to see the ridership settle over an extended period of time, and I would be shocked to see that kind of thing happen. I really would, because that's not the way travel behaves in the region and in the city.
Bill, let's assume that, and we obviously don't know the service patterns yet for the Long Island Railroad, and if it's going to be every other train on a line that's going to do Grand Central Penn, or
right, we haven't even seen a service plan yet.
But let's assume that there's a fair number of people who formerly went to Penn, changed for the 2 and 3 expresses to go downtown to the financial district, who are now going to be into Grand Central, are going to take the 4 or 5 downtown to the financial district. That is a switch that you're turning on the minute East Side Access starts.
Right.
So there's no question that those riders who formerly went downtown on one, and if their service pattern is such that they go into Grand Central instead of Penn, they're going to use the Lex.
Right. Correct. But remember that the whole purpose of the East Side Access project is to address those customers because of the large number of trips that are within walking distance of Grand Central. That's the majority of customers that are going to be on those Long Island Railroad trains coming into Grand Central. Those that are within walking distance, because that's where they want to be today. And as you know, they backtrack from Penn Station. So I just encourage you to think about the dynamic that's going to go on, and it's going to take place over a period of time.
That's Midtown customers, obviously.
Yeah.
But just look at the two projects, and I think that it is very important, Andrew, to remember. We have two mega projects that, in a way, what you are suggesting is that, and Doreen, is that there is linkage between them, okay? If one is to think in those terms, and if you want to deliver now not a 4.5, not a 7.4, but in effect you take it together, because you almost imply that they ought to be looked together, you're talking about now scheduling a project that has over $12 billion together, right, to be delivered exactly in such a way so that we are as close as we can get within a 3-month window of delivering it. Believe me, on a mega project, if you can deliver within a 3-month window, it will be a great thing. So my point here is that
switch the 3-month window. That's all.
Just that should be our biggest problem, that we have to deliver that, and we deliver them a little early, or if I can deliver it earlier than a 9/16, believe me, I will do my best. Because that's the idea, to complete the project. Remember something very important. The completion of the hard construction will occur way before you turn on the trains.
Explain the second, the east side access.
The east side access, as an example, the commissioning would require us to train probably 1,200 train engineers and conductors, for all of them to learn how to operate on. You have to train them, test them, and then commission them to work on that. That's a long process. That's a process that could take way in excess of a year to go through all of these things. So we're looking at so when you do that, everything is in place. The signals are in place, the trains, the stations, everything is there. So my point is that the construction, the hard construction, will happen way before that. So, can I continue? Okay. In order to achieve that, we really have to put in place a very tight management plan. And some of the things that we have added to this to make sure is really to expand the OCO and IE risk review for all major contracts. Just remember, just the East Side Access, we're going to be running, going forward, about 40 contracts, 40-plus contracts. So this is not one contract. These are made of a multitude of contracts that have to be linked together to create this chain and come up to the other end with a product. And the idea of implementing risk identification and rating of the project, as recommended by FDA, we believe would allow us to come in let's put it this way, we're going to harmonize with FDA in that regard. So they will have the comfort that we can deliver, so they will agree with our numbers and schedule. That the monitoring of the risk is to drive by looking forward, not in the rear view mirror. We cannot wait for a quarter to find out something goes wrong, so we'll correct it. That's not how it should work. We are looking at risk proactively, identifying the problems, and work on them before they happen. Just quite frankly, just as today's example, the city is about to close down Park Avenue, I'm sorry, during the summer just for pedestrians. Guess what? East Side Access is heavily working at the corner of 37th Street and Park Avenue. Discussion we undertook early with DOT, and we will be allowed to continue to work. We'll make it nice, neat, but this is a problem that could have put us back a couple of months if we couldn't work. So these are issues that need to be identified and dealt with prior to them happening. We are going to strengthen our project control process. We're putting in place a governance initiative that will allow us to work in such a way that will not work in silos. All of the projects are sharing the same thing. We're doing weekly reviews. We're looking carefully at when designs need to end and when contracts need to start, and the process, how long it takes to award a contract, which one we should do a low bid, which one we should do just proposal. So this implementation of a discipline monitoring process, okay, that will create red flags, in effect, that will alert us when metrics are exceeded, that what is acceptable is no longer there, that we lose the variance, that we lose the slack that we had. So these are the things that we are putting in place, and we have put in place in many of them already, but we're now formalizing it across the board.
Is there a way, and these all sounds like great stuff in it, and I think one thing that you can bring different than the prior president to the committees is if there's some way you can come with a status report to these committee meetings so we can sort of see that, and I see your next thing is to provide regular reporting. I mean, it's one thing for us to hear, yeah, things are on track, and we heard that for many years, but not saw anything. If we can see that, the public can see that, and I think your point will only drive home even.
You're correct, and I, quite frankly, I had them in the presentation. I took them out today because I thought it's too long, and I am going to come back in September. I actually have the presentation ready to show you this enhanced governance strategy that we have in place.
I think that's extremely helpful. I would probably find the committee meeting much more helpful than seeing all the pictures of the rocks and stuff.
I do have them. Be glad to share them. I will be here in September, and I will show it to you. I mean, I actually had them, and I think, Linda, you saw that, some of them, right? You didn't see them? But I thought you did. But in any event, we do have that. And this is graphic, and it is just very succinct numbers that will tell you where we are on every project. In fact, sometimes if you want to know, because we take it on a sub-project, and then we build it up. That's how we arrived at our numbers. So you'll be able to see it.
And Michael, the two folks that are your point people for both 2nd Avenue Subway and East Side Access, are they here so we could at least acknowledge them?
Bill Goodrich, and he is the 2nd Avenue Subway project exec. And where is Al? Okay, Al Pasco is the deputy project exec. At this point, the project exec was Bill Stead, has resigned as of the end of July for personal reasons, and we are in the process of replacing. Okay.
Do you have more?
Done?
Okay. Thank you.
6 months ago, and I told you, he said it's going to be years over what they say.
Thank you. I'll say it again with the mic on. I really appreciate your interaction. It's not them against us. Let's really try. I hate this word because it's so overused around here, but let's be transparent, Mike. Cut to the chase, be transparent, and make us all feel like we're being handled with the respect that we deserve.
And you are? And you will?
Okay.
Can I say something nice about Dale?
He's our cheerleader.
Assuming that that's an affirmative response, we don't usually have the chair come to all the committee meetings. Dale has done that because I think that he wants to really hold the leadership together here. As you know, our last CEO has left. The interim CEO knows that she's not going to become the CEO. The CEO designate is, I assume, in England, waiting to be confirmed by the Senate, and is not participating in any of the preparation because of the uncertainties. And Dale has really been the force that is holding, I think, the entire MTA together. And he does it as a volunteer. He attends the committee meetings, which is unusual. He is the, as you said, the chief cheerleader. And I think we all owe him a great a round of applause and a thanks.
You're making me blush. making me blush. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark, for that. Okay, now we're going to go spend some money.
The procurement agenda this month, I'm kind of weepy, actually.
Well, let me just go through them real quick.
Sure.
Not because you're weepy, because believe me, I feel the same way you do. And I would have liked what Mark had said at the press conference when they were announcing.
That would have been the proper place.
That would have been and that was left out. And I can't tell you how many people, Dale, are very upset that that was left out of that press conference. That's why I'm glad I wasn't there. Okay. The procurements, there's 9 items for approval. We have 1 non-competitive item, 7 competitive items, and 1 ratification. If you would like Ronnie to go through each one, she'd be happy to, or do you want to peruse your books and ask questions? It's up to you. Okay.
While perusing, may I just note that in
The walk-in item?
I'll do that right after, if you don't mind. In the East Side Access procurement items, the bulk of that work is moving scope around. It's not adding work. I did want to highlight that for the board.
Okay, are there any questions on these items? Yes.
On item number 4,
Uh-huh.
which is a $40 million item for the number 7 West project, is that money contained within the city's $2.1 billion?
Yes, it's not a
It's not
$40 billion,
additional.
it's $19 million. It's a modification.
Modification of 19, yeah. That's contained within the city's.
Yeah, it is moving it from contingency dollars into a specific item.
All right, thank you.
Yes,
I
Mark?
move that the items be approved.
Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, lastly, for this portion of the meeting, there was a walk-in item regarding the Port Authority. Does everyone have that memo on their desk?
There's a letter transmitting the item to the committee members. This is an item in which the Port Authority needs some space within the World Trade Center East Station for footings, columns, that will be part of the World Trade Center construction. And as part of the deal, they are agreeing to pay for the $150 million design and construction of the new number 1 Cortlandt Street station. Currently, the train runs through there, but there is a station that needs to be developed as part of the World Trade Center.
Is the status of that station still that it only begins construction when the whatever the Freedom Tower is now, One World Trade Center is
The
built?
construction schedule will need to be coordinated with the development of both the Freedom Tower and the other towers that are adjacent by Silverstein.
But there's no plan to begin construction until those towers are in construction, is that?
I think that's true, but I think that's also still part of a fluid plan.
That's been that way all along. That's been the plan.
So the issue of the Port Authority funding the Cortlandt Street Station is something we've heard for a while. I guess I just want to congratulate. We seized the opportunity. Sounds like we sold columns for $150 million, but it does sound like we got
I had to
a
read it
commitment.
3 times last night.
I mean, it sounds like we took the opportunity to get a commitment that the Port Authority is now committed by MOU to give us the 150, and it looks like an advance on $70 million. So
That's correct, exactly right.
Just one last question, Ronnie.
congratulations on seizing the opportunity.
Okay, but we're not going to give a hand. We
Just
did
out of
enough
curiosity, Ronnie, and is the commitment by the Port Authority to fund the construction of the station, and if it goes beyond the 153, they'll do that, or it's just?
No, it's up to $150
It's up to $150
million.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
They yet to write us just a blank check.
Okay, now we need a vote on that.
I move that the resolution be adopted.
And a second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're going to move to the real estate portion of the meeting. Thank you very much. We won't be working in August, but you guys will. Woo.
Real estate will be quick.
It's quick and very uneventful.
Yes, there are 17 items. 3 New York City Transit items. Notable in those are negotiated acquisition, once again, for a property for the East Side Access vent plant. There are now 7 Metro North items, recognizing that we've postponed one. And of those 7, 3 include GCT retail leases. One notable Metro North item is a request to proceed with acquisition through negotiated sale for an expansion of the Fordham station. There are 6 Long Island Railroad action items that seemed that they were pretty typical Long Island Railroad items, and there is 1 MTA action item to extend the Verizon license agreement for payphones in the system by 2 years. Staff is here to answer any questions you may have about any of the items.
In the 66th Street station on the one line, the agreement with Lincoln Center, does that agreement stipulate hours that that entrance will be open?
Good question. Prescott, do you know? Oh, Prescott, can you say what was, this is, Judy was
In 2
from,
minutes. I'll call you in 2 minutes.
Judy, you need to come up to a mic.
Usually, the transit authority sets the hours of the station. Should be able to get into the station at any time. The only thing that you won't be able to get into is when you get out of the turnstiles. There is also a corridor that will let you to go into Lincoln Center underground. There is currently a corridor, but they're just moving everything. So, I hope that's the Lincoln Center will control that gate. Does that respond?
I appreciate that. I'll take it up with transit because that is currently, or before it went into construction, was not a 24-hour entrance, and the relocation might make it feasible to be a 24-hour. So I'll ask them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I know we're in this whole recognizing mode, but Linda also has been wearing a couple of hats, and we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay? All righty. And Nancy, you'll get back to me on the Grand Central Terminal.
Second.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay. I was going to move to end the meeting. All in favor? Okay, so moved. See you next week.